Hey everyone, it's October 1st, 2024, and I want to walk you through what we've been doing for the past month. So it's been a little over a month. We did a lot of development, and we pretty much finalized what we're calling phase one, which is the build process. And now we're into phase two, which is monitor and tweak. And as we get our monitor and tweak up to the level we need, we've got two particular goals we want to finish during monitor and tweak. Then we can start scaling. Okay, so I want to walk you through that real fast just to give you a sense because, you know, you haven't seen any of the work we've been doing in the back end. And as far as we all just started off with, it was as simple as, hey, we're just going to make a whole ton of calls and get some conversions. It's like, yeah, but let's do this smartly or else we're going to mess it all up. So, all right, first of all, lead strength is huge. Okay, the amount that can be charged, average paid cost per lead if paying for ads, average organic cost per lead if not paying for ads. Okay, these numbers are nice and large, and it's just nice to have handy references. So as we expand into services, we know what they're expecting in the way it costs. We can speak in terms of what they're paying now or should be paying now, and what we can do instead to improve that for them. So going through charts like this is cool. Some of these are really expensive. You know, you get up to paid ads for higher education, and you're talking about leads being $1,250 each. You know, just in terms of total averages. Cost per lead is a pretty simple mathematical formula. It's the total amount you spent divided by the number of leads that you got is the cost per lead. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm just pointing it out. It's sort of a starting point. So, okay, let's move forward. We're talking about DUI. We're talking about, guess what? We threw in other industries, and here's why. When calling through DUI, we find that we hit IVRs. Those are the phone menus very, very, very often, probably more than we used to. And so often we hit IVRs. And then the rest of the time we're hitting, you know, the secretary, the receptionist, somebody who's not the decision maker, somebody who tells us basically, I can't help you, but contact them, or I'll have them contact you, or send the information here. Usually they don't say I'll have them contact you. They say you contact them. They're telling us to contact somebody else. So let's start with this. When we got through phase one, I'm going to walk you through what phase one looks like as a finished thing so you can see it. It's nuts. Oh, one thing I want to point out in the meantime, we're getting lots of leads in particular industries that we have had up for a while now, you know, and that we can start matching this kind of thing to the clients, but doing it willy-nilly isn't very helpful. So we're building on both ends. We're going to meet in the middle, just so you know. It's a huge deal. So that's leads over a couple of months. But at the same time, the reason to get that going is because we do want to do a meet in the middle process for just definitely locking in what we're after. There's a couple of ways to approach it. We want to make sure to get it to happen. So IVRs, phone menus. Sometimes you call and you get a phone menu that says, if you're an existing client, press 1. You know, if you're a new client, press 2. And that's one way to go. So what is our assistant supposed to do? You know, it has to listen for something like to talk to a live agent, press 0, or it has to assume press 0. And so it's trying to navigate that. Now, that's some IVRs. Other IVRs are doing what? They're saying, instead of if you're an existing client or a new client, what do they say? They say, to talk to Mr. Schultz, press 1. To talk to Mrs. Bowman, press 2. To talk to Mr. Daniels, press 3. And you're like, ooh, I didn't know who I wanted to talk to. So how does our system respond to that? Another one to go, we could just tell it, use the first one. We could tell it, choose randomly, you know, that kind of thing. Here's another one. You call the IVR. And sometimes it's a building with different entities in it. And the one you were after is one of them, but the phone number's to the desk that can direct you to any of them. So then the question becomes, who are we trying to reach? You know, for this law firm, press 1. For that law firm, press 2. You know, and that goes for the variability of those phone menu cases makes it interestingly complex to program our scripts because we have to teach our assistants how to react by listening to figure out what case is happening and how to make sensible decisions within each of these cases. And there are very many of these. So IVR navigation is something that in phase 2, now that we're done with phase 1, is part of our monitor and tweak update. So phase 1's done, we're in phase 2. Phase 2 is monitor and tweak. The reason for monitor and tweak is before we go spending a ton of money scaling, we're going to lose a bunch of money on a bunch of calls that are just not going to go to the right place because we don't know how to navigate through that IVR system, okay? So before we go spending a lot of money expanding like that, what we're doing is teaching our assistants to understand how to recognize in most cases possible from the IVRs to minimize the loss, the cost loss as we scale, right? We don't want the cost loss to be like 80% of all the money. We want the cost loss to be like 20% of all the money. So that's one of the two things that we find is a very common situation, is a phone menu. The other case isn't a phone menu, but a voicemail. Fun thing about the voicemail, sometimes you call and you just get a voicemail instead of a live person or an IVR. You get a voicemail. And the other piece of the voicemail concept is sometimes when you call during working hours, you get an IVR, but if you call after working hours, you get a voicemail. So these are different conditions that cause us to consider what we want to do. Because we can call the same company more than once from a different phone number using a different voice with a different message. But having said that, let's come back to how the assistant acts during the normal process. If it realizes it's not an IVR, how does it realize it's a voicemail? Very often our assistants think they're talking to humans when they're talking to a voicemail. And so the person on the other end seems to talk and our assistant's waiting, and when it hears a break, it starts talking. And then it hears a beep, and sometimes it doesn't recognize that, and it's still saying, hello, are you still there? Other times it just heard the beep, and it paused for a moment, and then it came back and reiterated what it was saying, right? So how do you recognize voicemail? So IVR navigation on this end is what we're monitoring and tweaking to lower the percentage of cost loss from that. Then the other cost loss is based on voicemail recognition, okay? Some shortcuts that we're playing with now seem to be the exact answer to that. We were trying different things. You have reached so-and-so law firm. Okay, well that could be an IVR or a voicemail. So there's no exact rule to follow in there. But you know what we realized was a pretty good rule? And we're going to keep playing with it, but it's this. If you reach a real person, what happens? So-and-so law firm, how can I direct your call? Very short message. When you get a voicemail, it's not like that, right? You have reached so-and-so law firm. Our office hours are Monday to Friday, 8 to 7 Eastern Standard Time, whatever. If you have called after hours, leave a message. Otherwise, hit the button to get the extension you want, blah, blah, blah. It's a long bit of conversation, right? And then there's the whole thing of after the beep, right? Leave a message after the beep or whatever it is. Or press 0 to leave a message, who knows? And so, again, IVR navigation and voicemail recognition. So telling the assistant, if the person answers and it's a very long discussion without saying options like press 1, 2, or 3, then wait for the beep and leave a message, right? And then we always have the hard kill. That's like if nothing's happening and you don't hear a user, nothing's changing on the other end, and or you cannot understand the conversation. That was another thing. Background. Sometimes you get background music, background noise. Sometimes it's background music with somebody singing, a human voice. And the assistant thinks it's a human on the other line, right? Or on the other end of the line. And so teaching it how to understand when to hang up, So all those things are just little things along the way. We taught it how to hang up pretty quick in most cases because it was easy to say if the user's not being responsive in the right kind of way, just go ahead and end the call. So that was pretty easy. But IVR and voicemail are the things that we're mastering in phase 2. And then guess what? When we get those down as low as possible, we get to scale. And here's why. We have built in our ability to use the phone numbers randomly as it calls through people, use the voices that we select randomly, use the scripts randomly, and we created IDs for these things so that whenever we're contacting anybody, we know which phone number we contacted them with, which voice, and which script. That way, if we go to call them back later, we can choose randomly a different phone number, different voice, different script from our list of acceptable scripts that we're testing out, working on, tweaking, and improving the results from. Okay, so as we really get that nailed in and we like what's going on there, then what do? We scale, right? Now, here's the thing we found aside from IVR and voicemails that, like I said, very often we don't get a decision maker. We get somebody at a desk, whether it's somebody for the whole building. You know, there's all those desk side services being offered now. And so very often somebody will say, where do you want me to direct your call? And being able to say, I need Schultz and Baker's law firm. So she goes, okay, great. Hold on while I transfer you. You know, that's important. Having said that, very often we're told to contact so-and-so at this phone number later, or to email the information to this guy. And the whole point is they're the decision maker. And so when we're being sent, that is good, right? When somebody says, call this guy on Wednesday, you know, to talk about it, that's one thing. Email this guy the information's another. Okay, I went through the cases, so let me just show you what phase one wound up looking like by the time we had this thing laid out. It's pretty fascinating. The way this stuff looks, okay, I'm just going to show you. It's all Google Sheet stuff. There's different URLs for each of the industries. Landing pages makes it really simple to keep track of here. And then we got simple domains like easyduileads.com. When you go there, it redirects to the duileads.decryptmyleads.com link, right? So we can say very easy domain names over the phone. And when people can remember it, they can go visit the site. And we've had hits. So let me keep going. Down here, we went ahead and tried some different industries. We realized we want to compare and contrast which industries don't have so much IVR happening there percentage-wise. Which industries would you be more apt to get a decision maker right away or a human right away? So we thought, let's try a few out. So we decided to go ahead and lay them out, create the variations of the pitch to, you know, offer leads within each industry. And so there's that. And then the other part of it is on season and off season. So some industries are on season and they're kind of like, they don't have time to talk about marketing angles because they're in the middle of whatever they can do for the season and they're working on jobs. But other guys are between seasons, like what just happened? Summer just ended. Winter's going to start soon, but we're in the middle, we're in fall. So HVAC is ready and ripe to discuss lead options with because they want to build up the marketing angles that make sense to them to prepare for winter. Does that make sense? And then, of course, in spring, they're going to want to discuss what they can do to prepare for summer. But during winter and during summer, they're busy. It's hard to talk to them. Well, everyone's got something like that going on. Roofing, garage door, painting, plumbing. Plumbing, you're chasing around the natural disasters that are happening in the states that tend to have them because people call plumbers almost as readily as they would call water damage restoration or fire damage restoration. Not so much for fire, you would call a plumber, but for water damage restoration, you would. Anyway, so we just said, okay, let's, try some of these things out, see how it goes. Let me show you just how this stuff looks. It's pretty freaking cool. So if you look, these are documents, okay? They have charts of where we've been going with our calls. We built a lot of tracking information because it's so important, right? Say make a bunch of calls and you're wondering how you can improve the results. Maybe you didn't even get any, or maybe you got a few and you're thinking, how can we improve them? Well, what would be a good question? Who hung up the phone most, the user or the bot? Was it the user hanging up the phone early, or are we having good conversation? So there's another question. How many times did the AI speak? How many times did the human speak back? Therefore, how many total things were said? That would be a long call if it's more often, a short call if it's less. And so our success, one measurable, is percentage of long calls out of total calls, right? So that is an important measurable. There are very many measurables. So if I were to look at any one of those, just to give you an idea, like DIY lawyer, roofing, painting, we did some of these too with the side industries just to test stuff out before coming back to DIY, especially if we said, skip past the IVR issue more and let's see what else we can learn. And so like first round of calls that we made, we had shorter failed calls were the majority of them, almost all out of 465. By the time we figured out what we were doing, we ran out a bunch of calls, and long calls were 100 out of 525, right? Calls needing follow-up got to be 75, and we realized, holy crap, we're getting this thing nailed correctly. Much, much better. So then we're just doing math on each assistant. Assistant A, assistant B, shorter failed calls versus long calls. These are really good ratios. I don't mind ratios like that. If you have 50 long calls and 200 short calls, that's fine. That's actually very, very normal it's even good statistics. So we got long calls percentage for assistant A and B, right? So we can compare different script approaches, see what's performing better than what. We didn't know which of these was going to outperform the other, right? And they're very close, actually, 19% to 22. That's on a small sample size. So as far as I'm concerned, they're pretty even Steven. It would take a lot more calls to figure out which one's really better, but even then, they're both doing their job quite well. Okay, so just going through stuff like average number of user messages and success evaluated, and the percentages of success evaluated. That stuff is also in line, except success evaluated with B way outshines A. See why it's important to have different statistics so that you can really see where you're going. You might have long calls are the same, but one of them is creating better success. Depends on how you're measuring it, but there you go. I think you get the idea. So we just started diving in. Total calls, of which long calls, calls needing follow-up, success evaluated. Did we capture any emails? Did we capture any phone numbers? Did we get a booked appointment? Yeah. And inbound call 0. But this is us learning and testing and not yet monitoring and tweaking so much as getting good. This started with all the initial calls we ever made in this industry. So, we're learning and tweaking as we go. We didn't make all those calls at once. We did a few a day, right? Because we're trying to look for good signs. Now, this is a case where in some of the industries you see what we're doing. A few small calls, make sure the thing's connecting properly and acting okay, and then jump large, see what happens, and then come back. What did you learn from it? So the next couple of days, you're sort of reassessing and making little tweaks and testing. And then you think you're ready, push a bunch more out, and then some more testing and tweaking, right? Testing and tweaking until you get it right. Long calls per assistant, assistant A and B. Success evaluated A and B, right? See how B is so much more. Okay? Average user messages A and B. And so all this kind of thing is interesting. Customer satisfaction, how many successful elements did you have in there? Why did the call end? Was it the customer? Was it silence, timed out? Was it voicemail? Was it the assistant wanted to end the call? Which is usually when the assistant's done its job. Okay. Call to action. Successful 15.7% on a call to action. Not bad at all. Average handle time, how many calls were long? How many were optimal? How many were short? These are normal. Okay, that's normal stats, but it's interesting because we're still tweaking within the bands. Appointment booking success, 1. So 1, not applicable is 107. And booking is different. Booking doesn't mean the only thing. Like I said, call so-and-so back at this phone number. That is success, but not a booking. Okay, email the information to this guy. That is success, but not a booking. Right? Now with emails, that means newsletter, that means drip on them. We don't assume one email is going to work anyway. If we sent one to everyone that asked to send Bob the email, we never hear back from hardly anyone because it's just how it is, right? Human nature. No one's going to respond to the first email most of the time. Now, notice what's going on. This is a lot of information, right? And very useful because it helps us evaluate our progress, especially as we move forward and compare stats for this week to stats for last week. Compare Thursday of this week to Thursday of last week. Tuesday of this week to Tuesday of last week, etc., right? Now, having said that, take a look. That's one tab. For the one industry, painting, there's a lead list. So we were going through the leads and who's who and who's going to give us the information that we need to contact them back. Our KPIs, key performance indicators. So when the call happened, what script did we use? How did the entire conversation go? Do we need to do a follow-up? False for that one, true for that, true for that, true for that. That's freaking great. I love it. Call to action success, none, but attempted and attempted and attempted. These things are useful. Appointment booking success, not applicable yet. Okay. Customer satisfaction. And so we're measuring so we can see how we're doing. Average handle time, short or long, right? Success. No. A lot or not. Not in the beginning. It's because we're holding ourselves to our standards and tweaking and monitoring and improving until we get better at it. We've got great guys on it. We've got great scripts. We just need to keep practicing to get everything right. Sometimes the assistant would say the phone number too fast, and it would seem like a joke to give somebody the phone number that fast. What number do I reach you back at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Do you need me to repeat that? Oh, that just sounds insulting, doesn't it? So we had to fix that. You know what we found? Some of the voices cause that, some other ones don't. There are, by the way, a lot of good voices now. Many great ones to test. And yes, we even have backgrounds so that when a call comes in, you hear the background, the murmuring of other people at their cubicles or whatever it is. So the cool thing about it is it makes the call sound so much better. And some of the voices, when you go straight to the source, like 11 Labs, or if you go to play.ht, the voices are awesome. And so we've been, putting them into our cycling routine so we can call the same companies back from different numbers with different voices, with different messages that are wrapped, different attempts, different angles, right? Based on the evaluations that we see. Like, we're not going to call a guy back if this is true, right? Because already that guy's in a different bucket. Now we're treating them differently. They're not here at the beginning anymore. They're further along the chain, right? Okay. So timestamps, when was this stuff done? What do we need to do next? How many things did the user say? How many things did the AI say? So there you go. This is a long call, 5 and 6. So the AI spoke 6 times while the human spoke 5. Cool, man. Interesting all the way around. So just tracking all this stuff is helpful. We can go listen to the exact conversation. We can look back here at the transcript and see what was said so that we can see what it's all about. See how it went. Okay, phone numbers, that's just the numbers that we have, like Twilio numbers, Vonage numbers that are attached to this process. So far we haven't scaled, so we don't need a lot of phone numbers for painting. Okay, there's a phone number for painting. There's phone numbers for each of these industries. Assistants involved, okay? Look at that, James, right? Outbound V2 for painting, James, that's the initial voice, right? That's just, we stuck with the name James. It matches the guy, the British male, right? Calls per day statistics so that we can track our progress as we go. Inbound statistics, I don't know, we don't have anything here. Nobody's called in, that's why. All right, take a look at this. DUI lawyer outreach, bigger numbers, right? Total calls since the beginning, 1,140. That includes everything we ever did wrong. Long calls, 419. Wow. So we're really doing pretty darn good, right? Calls needing follow-up, 315. Success evaluated, 84. Email captured, phone captured, inbound calls, no booked appointments. Everybody's saying, I can't just book an appointment for you with a guy unless the guy's interested. Contact him by email or phone, right? Contact her. Inbound calls, even 12. So figuring out how to handle all these things as they were happening, right? Getting them lined up, getting the systems built ahead so that when these guys contact us, they have somewhere to go and, it gets better as they go, like either into the newsletter or into the system, fill in the form for their preferences, or schedule a call, just all these things that we want to do. So most of this and a lot of this came more recently. If you think about it, it was like there, but then down, 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 up, down, down, up, down, down. That's just us going along, tweaking and improving. Most of the good success that we're having here came in here, okay? Later rather than earlier. That's really what I mean. I'm not paying exact attention to the dates, but it's like we weren't even doing any things with emails and phones that we were capturing before. But we find that when it comes to the DIY industry, that's mostly what we're getting when things are going right. Somebody is saying, contact this guy at this number or at this email. So heck yeah, we need to be tracking that and dealing with it properly. All right, long calls per assistant, success evaluated, average count of user messages, customer satisfaction and a reason, number of inbound calls per day. That's interesting, isn't it? You can see it, and you can line it up. 9/24 lines up with which date, 9/24 right here. See that? Like I said, most of the calls are coming in further in, right, and stuff. So inbound calls. In other words, we're getting better. That's all I mean to say. We're getting way better. All right, fine. Call to action. Attempted was almost half and successful was 14.5%. It's very cool. I do not mind numbers like that, right? Optimal handle time, the physical phone call being the right amount of time is like 10 to 11%, 10.9. This is cool. It's getting better. So we're just keeping track of all of our stats, graphing all the important data so we can see what we're doing as we go. So I did painting, DIY, now there's roofing, same thing now. We're just keeping up and learning real fast by checking out things from different angles and seeing what that turns into. Okay, when you talk about newsletter, that's exactly it. We created campaigns for each of the different industries: plumbing, cold outbound; HVAC, cold outbound; painting, cold outbound; roofing, garage; DIY warm outreach version 2, follow-up outreach, and cold outreach or cold outbound. So we're going through all this stuff and just running all this stuff out. And it's cool because we're covering ground. And we're capturing the stats that come off of the email actions. So people in the emails, like DIY cold callers, there were 15 sends, 2 opens out of it so far, 1 click. Right? That might have been the one that booked the appointment. So think about the fact that we're tracking it clearly as we go. This is campaign performance. Okay? So we're really covering ground. Now let me come back to this. I want to point out more. The cold caller manual. How does it all work? We got report tabs with charts and statistics. More charts. Lead list tab with how we run the calls out. We run them out first hour of the morning and then later in the afternoon. These functions don't exist automatically. We had to create our own ways of doing all that. And then follow-up calls. Do they get added to the next day morning or the next day evening? Or were we told to call back on Wednesday or on the 15th? Figuring all that out. KPI tab. Who and stuff like, does a call need follow-up, appointment booking success, call to action success? What do we know about these things? How is that going, right? What do the notations we give mean? All this stuff. And then, like I said, this is us being able to see the transcripts and see how the calls are coming out by reading through them. We can go listen to them directly, but it's faster to read. So you'd only listen if you want to double check what something in here meant, if it was hard to understand. Then what? We've got phone number tab for all the phone numbers involved in each industry, the assistants involved in each industry. We could have 20 phone numbers, but 5 assistants using them, right? Or because we can mix and match. So it's important to track the IDs. So when we call a company, we tracked which phone number we called with and which assistant, along with the date, time, and all that. So if we go to call them back later, depending on whether that was an unsuccessful call, we'll try a different pitch, different phone number, different voice, different message, right? That's so cool. We can do that. It's legal. So that's the coolest thing, because we're calling companies, right? It would be a little different if we were calling residences. We'd have to be more careful. But we're not. We're calling companies. Calls per day statistics, inbound call statistics. So there's just stuff like that, right? Then we have, a setup checklist that tells us when we set up a new industry, we have to make sure to set up the new landing pages, payments, headers, domain, create the order automation, then set up the assistants, all the tabs involved. That's all these tabs for for an assistant, all these tabs right down here, right? Call per day and all that jazz. And then create the document that lays out who's involved, which phone numbers, which assistants, what messages. Select the campaigns that we're going to add these guys to, because different industries, therefore different campaigns. Cold caller callbacks with a KPI. Cold caller scheduling automation stuff, and avoiding duplicate phone numbers. There were times that people were complaining because we call them like 4 times and we didn't know what that meant or how. Then we found the different company phone numbers would forward to the front desk. So there were just ways that we had to look in there and say, if phone number being forwarded to here, and we've already done that, cancel it, drop the call, before it goes through. Or make sure to do it with a different assistant. So all this stuff we had to go through. Providing access to the docs and add new branch. Oh, branches. Let me just show you what I mean by that. When you think about how involved this is, the programming side, scheduling the cold caller automations, we have all these functions, and then within them we have all these actions, and then we have things like this. Schedule the setting from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. local time zone. So when we do a data dump of a lot of companies, we got a lot of phone numbers. It actually has to figure out which phone number belongs to which area code, so that it only calls between 9 and 10 local time, no matter who it's calling, right? So we've got it calling 9 to 10, and then 9 to 10, and then 9 to 10, and then 9 to 10 as it goes from the East Coast to the West Coast, right? And so we have this thing about minutes, being 65. To say that's a different thing. That's saying from one day to the next, right? So when it gets done, it has to wait at least 65 minutes and then check again, and yet it can only run the next day at the right time. Then we have another one to run later, right? So we have 65 minutes, and then this, and then this, and then because of the 65 minutes anyway, this, then this. That's the wild thing about it. It's so cool. Post-call webhook automations, for different functions. Follow-up scheduling automations for all these things. Look at this. See all this cold caller stuff, this branches? These are branches that spread out. These are all the programming actions that were necessary to get the process figured out from one end to the other. So if-then kind of stuff. That has to do with scheduling a call, or adding a guy to a newsletter, or scheduling the follow-up call the next day if we're not putting it on the calendar, etc., etc. So just going through all this stuff. I don't know if you can see this. Let me just try to maximize something here. It's going to be kind of hard to see. Well, take a look. You got to go from the webhook to the router to the Google Sheets to decide what you do from there. Whether you're breaking it off, like if it's a duplicate, crap, I can't believe I can't get that thing in there. Or you're going to go through another router. These are all little steps along the way that check things. And then what? Either you go into the newsletter campaign or through an iteration to a different campaign. Really depends on how things went with the call. And you've got the diagram for this kind of thing with the KPI, then the history. Like what we did before, and incomplete executions where there are problems, so that we can address them and fix the issues. Isn't that nuts? So it's a lot of stuff, we built like mad, man. Follow-up caller automation, how it works and what's involved with that. Selecting the records that need follow-up equals true. Follow-up call done is empty. In other words, we haven't done it yet. And then if the current time is the afternoon, then we got to set it for the next morning. If it's morning, then set it from, yesterday's afternoon. In other words, set it to call the next morning. Select a random assistant, but not the same as a previous call. Select a random phone number, etc. Like I said, we have to ID all that stuff so that we do it right. How's that for nuts? Booking appointment automations. I mean, just all this stuff is so involved, right? That's really the only thing to say about that is just it's so involved. Statistics automations to figure out how things went statistics wise, and active campaign, being able to dump the emails automatically into the right newsletters to go out, and then tagging the actions every time somebody's going through the newsletter cycle. Did they open the email or not? If not, resend same email a couple days later. Then if not, resend different version of intro email a couple days later, right? Try from a different angle. Angle 2. If you can't get them on the one, see if you can get them on the other, get them on the third. But for the guys who, in fact, they took the first step, and we shouldn't be emailing them intro level stuff anymore. We should be emailing them more advanced stuff or further step in. Then we would remove a tag, meaning intro level, and then add a new tag, right? Which puts them in the next category over so that they're getting different newsletters, right? Different messages that have to do with where they're at. So this is an example of such an email that would just go out, reaching out to them, right? And the thing that makes this more helpful is that we were recommended in. And so we can definitely use that in our subject line approaches. And we had the right to add them because we were told to. We got records of that. So, yeah. Anyway, there you have it. So this is what we've been up to for the past, 4 to 5 weeks that we've been fully on this thing. And yeah, it's no joke, man. We have covered so much ground. There were a lot of things you were trying to do before that we had to scrap and do differently because you just learn real fast as you go through the stuff. And there are a lot of tools involved. We've got a couple of different AI callers. We've got a couple of different, do you know what Zapier is? The tools that connect A to B, slot A to tab B, meaning different softwares to each other so that you can create webhooks, event listeners, ways of passing the information forward into the database, and then that triggers an action. The database copies that into a Google Sheet and then makes something else happen, like sends or add an email to the newsletter, just all these pieces. And then we have the calendar involved, bunch of numbers, Twilio, Vonage numbers, and just figuring out the automation for testing a lot of scripts through a lot of companies using different phone numbers and different voices, but tracking so you never use the same combination more than once, so that you're trying the different angles. And for the companies that are moving along, we're tracking that so we know they're moving along so we can handle them better. Yeah, most guys are not going to buy right away. It still takes a little time, but handling these guys automatically and really, really well is what we've actually been just building up like mad. So yeah, this is turning into a really great system, and it's going to do us a world of good. I'm so glad that we got this far, because now we're done with that. Like I said, what are we doing now? IVR navigation, voicemail recognition. Voicemail recognition will be really quick. That's just the next thing where we want to optimize that. And IVR navigation we've been working on, so we're getting better and better. That's how we're getting success rates in the first place, and callbacks and capturing things like emails and phone numbers. So we're just going to make sure we got those as tweaked as we can for perfection, and then we start pushing them out. What else are we doing? I didn't even bring it up. We're tracking hits to the pages. There we go, complete with screen recordings. So these are screen recordings. So we can see how people are acting on the pages. We can see which are bots, like these are bots, or just totally uninterested people, like a Google proxy, that's a bot, So this way we are really, and Stack Hunter has an API. So we're getting ready to feed the data from Stack Hunter that we identify as being the right thing. In other words, there is a screen recording. It is not a Linux device. It's not a Google proxy. In the case, feed it back. So what IP address, what city, what time, and then that way we can relate, and what URL, whether it's painting leads or garage door leads or, whatever leads, DUI leads. That way we can feed this stuff back and figure out who these people are, and we're just tracking the progress so that we can all the better react to each individual properly. We can see when we set an email off, we can tell if somebody clicked a link. We can tell if they landed on the page. We can see what they did on the page. We can even feed that back automatically to move this person from step 3 to step 4 or whatever it is in the newsletter cycle, depending on what the guy did. And so all the different angles and pitches and elements that we have to make all this work, right, is all coming along beautifully. So now that we see everything clearly because we're tracking it all and all the programming is done, it's just IVR, navigation, voicemail recognition, won't take too long, and just tweak and, monitor and tweak, do like a pitch all week, make little adjustments to it unless it's really broken, but usually it won't be. Usually I listen to a lot of the pitches, they're great. I listen to all of them at one time or another. We keep tweaking as we go. And I really like them. So we've gone through these things enough to know what we're listening for. The pitches are not mispronouncing any words, not pronouncing the domain name wrong, not talking too fast. We got all that stuff figured out and with the right voices. And so a little monitoring and tweaking just to minimize the amount of waste as we scale, right? So that we can maximize ROI as we scale. Anyway, we'll be doing that for maybe 2 to 4 weeks, I guess, something like that. Just, like 1 week's iteration, and then the next week, see if we really think there's a different pitch that we should try. Based on this week, should we do something different? So like whittle, improve, see where you wind up. And then if we think, okay, that gives me an idea for another better pitch, all right, we can try it. And of course, we're tracking so we can see. So like 3-4 weeks of this monitor and tweak, that'll bring us up to maybe November. But then we should be able to scale. And about the time we're scaling, that is when things are just automatically going to start working. Some people will buy up front. Some people schedule calls. We'll talk to them, then they'll buy. Other people go through a newsletter process. Other people will probably make some kind of an offer, get in, set up, we'll give you this thing, and then we'll drip on them the newsletter until they also upgrade. So there's this stuff that we can do. We'll give them some free leads, but they won't be exclusive. They won't be qualified until they upgrade their payment. But it's a way for them to get in and go, wow, that's getting close. I really do like these leads and I want to do more. Okay. So we're not actually that far away. So I hope you see the promise here. I know all you guys are waiting all the time. If you like the progress, thumb up the video because that way I can see really easily what you guys think. I think it's awesome. This took a tremendous amount of craziness. It's that mad scientist work, right? But we did it. And I know I don't give enough updates. I keep thinking I will, but I think, why don't we just get this part done first? And then it's like, oh man, well, since we did that, can we do this next part? Then I'll show them. And in that way, like 4 to 5 weeks can pass and I haven't put out an update video. I owe you guys one. So there you go. I just want you to see how far we came, right? It's really big and I love it. We can literally have different openers for our scripts, for talking, the assistant telling something to someone. We can go through 500 leads where we test 10 different messages and it just cycles through the 10 through all 500 leads. So that way we see the charts. And depending on where the results are better, we're able to track it back to which script it was. Things like that, which script outperforms which. I was showing you that. The assistant A and assistant B and results for them, right? So we're to the point where every single phone number we call could theoretically have an entirely different pitch. Doesn't make sense. It's better to test good pitches over and over again against other good pitches over and over again. But the reality check is we can automatically do that now. We did build in all that coding. We have the ability to do it all. So And that's for the initial calls and also for the follow-up calls. Okay? Yeah, this is getting really cool. Okay, I hope you guys like it. Monitor and tweak, and then we get to scale, and that's the fun part for us all. All right, talk to you soon. Have a good one. And yeah, the VP debate's coming up in like 19 minutes. I'm going to break off. I got to see that. I'm sure you do too. All right, talk to you soon.